You guys ever seen Pluto? Pluto is a manga created by Naoki Urasawa and has an anime adaptation which I will be talking about today. Pluto as a whole is a complex, interwoven story with many characters. The world is a reimagining of the world of Astro Boy, but with darker, more realistic tones. The society here has robots that are so realistic, there's an ethical debate to their use and to their rights. One key aspect about Pluto is that it is a post-war society. The 39th Central Asian War, in which Darius the 15th mass-produced a robot army, and in retaliation, the other world powers at B sent out the world's most powerful robots, and they were 7 of the world's most powerful robots, to be specific. They were 7 of the world's most powerful robots, to be specific. And they were sent to destroy this robot army. While the 7 robots did their job, over time, it made them question the morality and the meaning behind their destruction, and really the destruction of their own kind. They were sent to destroy this mass-produced army of robots, but weren't they robots created for mass destruction? So they were sent there. While the 7 robots did their job, over time, it made them question the morality and the meaning behind the destruction of their fellow kind. And they pondered their creator's intentions. They wondered, why were they being sent to destroy this robot army if they were going to cause mass destruction? But no matter what, they're causing the destruction anyway of their own kind right here. And they're asking whether this is right or whether it was if this is better than what Darius would have done with his army. And aren't they retaliating on him for doing the same thing? Because look at what the stuff that they did to this robot army shows that Darius needed this robot army. You know what I'm saying? To even stand a chance, because even though these robots weren't as strong, he had the numbers to defend his country. And so aren't they attacking for the same reason, just to have the power of robots? This trauma surrounding the war is the basis of the plot behind Pluto. The story opens with the murder of Mont Blanc, one of the 7 most powerful robots. And going forward, in the beginning, our protagonist, Gazik, is investigating this murder, and with him find out that the murderer is targeting the 7 most powerful robots. And this brings us up to speed to begin North Number 2's story. North Number 2 served as a butler for the commander-in-chief of the British Army during the 39th Central Asian War. He was one of the 7 powerful robots at the leader's disposal. He was one of the 7 most powerful robots at the world's disposal. Made for war. Oh my god. Made for war, he wears a cape because his whole body is a weapon. After the war, he has been reassigned as a butler for the world's most famous composer. After the war, he has been reassigned as a butler for a world-famous composer, Paul Duncan. North Number 2 warmly greets Duncan with compliments of his work, but immediately, Duncan berates him for being a machine of war and a robot. And we could tell that Duncan has some preconceptions about what a robot is and what a robot is meant to do. And I think moving forward, I like the dichotomy, because you have North Number 2 and he warmly greets Duncan, and Duncan just immediately just puts up that wall. But North Number 2 he's warm, and he doesn't really mean any harm, and so he just keeps asking questions, and so I like it. You know, Duncan sees him as a machine with no right to judge the value of art. We notice Duncan composing a piece. He works persistently at this one piece, but every time he gets to a certain point, it's like he can't find the notes, or he knows that oh. We notice Duncan composing a piece. He works persistently. We notice Duncan composing a piece. He works persistently at this one piece, but every time he gets to a certain point, it's like he can't find the notes. He knows goes with the whole composition. North Number 2 is always in range, listening, almost studying the composition. There's a scene where Duncan asks North Number 2 how many people he killed in the war. He says he can't harm people due to international robot laws. And Duncan remarks that that means he killed robots instead. North number two is dismissed before he can respond, but North number two immediately goes to the piano and tries to play the piano. It feels like North number two is. Cat, come on, man. There's a scene where Duncan asks North number two how many people he killed in the war. He says he can't harm people due to the international robot laws. Duncan remarks that this means that he killed robots instead. Before North number two can respond, he is dismissed, and he immediately goes to the piano and tries to play it. It feels like North number two is trying to redirect his emotions towards the music. You know what I mean? And Duncan immediately comes in and he says, "Nah, you can't play the piano. You're a robot." You know what I mean? And he prods Duncan until he reveals truths that seep into Duncan's work. Duncan's questions and his story, without Duncan knowing, it seems to be pushing North number two in only what I can describe as a human direction. North number two is already showing a capability for North number two is already showing a capability for deep thought. He asks meaningful questions, and it really shows what he is going to grow into. When North number two is making his rounds, I hate Windows notifications, dude. When North number two is making his rounds, he closes the door to Duncan sleeping. But before he closes the door all the way, he hears Duncan moaning a tune in his sleep. And we then move forward to the next scene where North number two is playing the piano, trying to recreate the tune from Duncan's sleep. And when Duncan awakes and realizes that North number two is playing on the piano, he demands North number two to leave. But North number two won't leave without making one request. Even while being berated and being told what he is, he denies his purpose of war and he rejects the destruction. And in the next scene, we see North number two persistent in his act and in his efforts, saying that he has gotten better than before. And quite frankly, he has, but Duncan denies it. He then berates North number two with his past as a war machine. But as he does so, he turns more towards a story. He then berates North number two with his past as a war machine. But he then turns towards himself and reveals more deeper truths about himself. And to me, it feels like Duncan feels that he could tell North number two these things because he's a robot. But maybe he wants North number two to like understand that what music is because he loves music so much. But either way, I think he's not justified in treating North number two this way. But without Duncan even realizing it, his actions are, I don't know. They feel like the inward going outward. You know what I mean? He wants the music to be heard, but he's so mad that it's not being heard. He's playing it more. And then he's just, I think North number two sees it and he picks up on it and he wants to show Duncan that he can understand. But he tells his story. And this is his story. He says his mother left when he was sick and he was shipped to a boarding school. And because of this, he clung to his music studies. But eventually his sickness became too much and he went hospital to hospital. While dying, he never saw his mother visit him or come for him or do anything. And then a man While he was dying, like on his deathbed, a man came in offering a miracle treatment in the chance that he might go blind. And while he survived and he was going blind, he tried learning as much about music as he could before he could go blind. And when he did eventually go blind, he had learned his mother had died. And after that, he became a world famous music composer. And he had bought the house that his mother's suitor had owned. It was this big old mansion that his mother's suitor had. And yeah, he basically just took over all the assets and all the property that the man that took his mother had. And the next scene is North number 2 playing the piano, but he's playing it beautifully. And as he plays, we are shown his memories of the war. We see his full body at work, gunning robots down. And we realize that North number 2 is the war machine that Duncan says he is. But as we could see with his work on the piano, that he does have the ability to become something more. And even Duncan can admit while he was going through his gardenly role that he has gotten better. And there's a scene where Duncan walks in on North number 2, and while he is charging, he looks at him and he realizes that he is dreaming. And we can assume that North number 2 is having dreams about his time during the war. And we can assume that these dreams are really nightmares. And later on, when North number 2 leaves, Duncan contemplates if he can even compose anymore. He goes on thinking about North number 2's advice. When North number 2 leaves, he contemplates if he can even compose anymore. He goes on thinking, reminiscing about North number 2's advice, about the melody in his sleep. And when he remembers that, he goes and he tries to play. But as he is playing, as he gets to that part, and he remembers his childhood as he's playing. And so it's really like North number 2's advice is helping, but as he gets to that part, he just can't remember it. Duncan tries to destroy his piano, but North number 2 interrupts him with his return, saying that he went to Duncan's hometown in Bohemia, studying folk songs, specifically to find the one he mumbles in his sleep. Duncan retaliates, saying that we don't remember everything. Humans don't remember everything for a reason. And Duncan asks why he would drag his nightmares into reality. But North number 2 responds, and he met an ancient man in Bohemia, one that told him this. He continues to say his mother that did not one that told him that come on, man. He met an ancient man in Bohemia, one that told him many things about Duncan. North number 2 continues to say that his mother did not abandon him, that the rich man who he thought stole her from him was actually sought out by Duncan's mother to pay for the miracle treatment he had received upon learning how much Duncan's treatment would cost. And when she learned how much Duncan hated her, she never reached out, feeling that was best. North number 2 then says that the ancient man remembers the tune that Duncan sings in his sleep. He remembers a beautiful young woman who would sing it with her son. And they were Duncan and his mother. They would sing that song hand in hand as the setting sun turned the fields into gold. North number two then proceeds to sing it. Duncan hears this and is brought to tears. He remembers. North number two went and did the work. He he understood the technicalities of music beforehand. Even Duncan can admit that before. But now we as the audience and Duncan has no there's no deniability that robots that in this universe they can understand the culture and they can understand the feeling that goes behind the music. And North number two North number two can understand what it means to be human through the music. North number two expresses who's that? He oh two. North number two expresses to Duncan. North number two expresses to Duncan that his dream is not a nightmare and that he deserves to remember his dream, as North number two deserves to remember his nightmares. We can see that Duncan has had a complete change of heart and he offers to teach North number two how to play the piano. I think that this relationship is beautiful because Duncan grows and North number two grows, but they both break down walls with each other through North number two's patience and Duncan's persistence on the value of human art. North number two, with patience and persistence, he shows Duncan that he is more than a war machine, as Duncan deemed him as. And so much so that with North number two's help and advice, he was able to find the missing piece of his composition. Although North number two would never hear the finished piece. The murderer of Mont Blanc was heading towards their location. He was targeting North number two as his second victim in the murder of the 7 most powerful robots. And upon detecting the murderer of Mont Blanc coming their direction, North number two says he'll be back soon, going to confront the assailant, where we see his full body right before he blasts off into the sky. And we can see them battling in fiery flashes and lightning in the air for a bit until we see a big old explosion. All throughout, Duncan is watching, hoping North number two will come back. He hears North number two sing with such feeling, and he begs him to come home for piano practice. But it was just North number two's final moments, and he chose to sing for Duncan. That ends the story of how North number two became more than a war machine and left an impact on a man's life while using his body made for war to make music. I recommend watching Pluto in its entirety. It has a lot of questions like this, like what are we made? What are we made for? And what can we choose to do with what we are given? Yeah, I think that the lesson here is that you can become more than what you think you are and what you are made to be. And thanks for watching. I appreciate it.